When I was 12, I watched a movie that made me miserable for the next 7 years. What seemingly insignificant thing has had a huge impact on your life? Saw The Truman Show when I was a kid. Hello paranoia. It wasn't until I saw it again as an adult and realized how obviously people were acting that it occurred to me my fears were more than a bit off. That's right, John. There is nothing to fear. By the way, happy birthday next Tuesday. Sitting next to people. Honestly, it scares me how much power that has. I sat next to a girl in homeroom 8 years ago, and we're roommates now. Sat next to a girl on a bus for a trip. We talk almost every day. Most of my friends and life has happened based on where I sat. It makes me wonder if life is fundamentally changed by that, or people are just more similar than we all realize. I think it's both. People are definitely more similar than we all realize. If people would talk to each other more, they would realize this. I do think life can change in an instant though, especially from something as simple as changing where you sit. I saw a person on the TV show Strange Addictions eat chalk. I was curious about how it tasted. Now, I eat little bits of chalk on a regular basis. It's strange, I know. Get your iron checked. Compulsion to eat chalk can indicate anemia. When I was but a young 6-year-old boy, there was just one thing I wanted for Christmas, a Buzz Lightyear. Just like the one in Toy Story, expandable wings, laser pointer, helmet that did the cool wash thing. This was literally the only thing on my list. Anyway, a quick backstory. This was the first year I would have Christmas without my father. He had cheated on my mum with my best friend's mother. Controversial. I suppose my dad wanted to make amends for kind of bumming out our Christmas, so he offered to get me Buzz Lightyear. Mum agreed to this. Christmas comes, and I received no Buzz Lightyear. In fact, I don't recall anything that year. On top of this, my dad got my best friend the Buzz Lightyear toy. Though I don't remember it clearly, my mum still recalls the heartbreak in me. For some reason, since that fateful day in '96, I've always had some sort of anxiety in expressing a want for something. A wonderful edit. Somebody got me some Reddit gold. I have no idea what this does, but thank you. Whoever you are indeed beautiful. Secondly, many people are angry with my dad. Justified, but it didn't destroy the relationship. I think it may have been the stepmom taking it or whatever, but either way we've gone on to be very close. And a lot of important life lessons have been learned from him. Apparently keeping to your word over Buzz Lightyear promises wasn't one of them, but I hold no ill feelings X. Your dad is a dong. Just saying. In my second semester of high school, freshman year, I didn't like my global studies teacher from the first semester and switched to the other one who was a new teacher. For some reason, after the great impression of not doing my homework that was assigned the first class, he took me under his wing, made me feel accepted. I had no friends for the majority of high school, and made the class so interesting I got involved. Before I knew it, I had a 95% in the class and he helped me a lot. Because of our friendship and talks after school, I now am a completely different person. I went from a socially awkward kid with summers by myself to being busy every day this summer hanging out with people. After a long, emotional talk with him about my life and where I wanted to be in 5 years, I withdrew my housing information from a college I had planned to go to since junior year. I applied to a school 3 hours from my house instead of the 3 states away I was going, and changed my major from pharmacy to social studies. I now hope to be a social studies teacher like him and can only hope to be half the man he is. He helped me repair my relationship with my younger brother that had been terrible for years, and he helped me break out of my shell as a person. Without him, I don't know where I would be, but there is no way I could be happier than I am now. All because he took time to help an underachiever in a freshman social studies class. In high school, I had no direction and had no idea what I intended to do with my life. During my senior year, I started watching Scrubs. I'm now in my last term of nursing school. TLDR. Watch Scrubs, become nurse. I watched Breaking Bad and now I make billions, with a B. I like to play this game of tracing back things to see if I can find a pivotal decision that made massive directional changes in my life. So here goes. When I was in high school, I ran a computer BBS. Totally above board, nothing even remotely illegal. One day a guy hacked it just for fun and deleted everything. I was able to restore it, figure out who it was, and then he called back to survey the damage. I had a bit of a temper as a kid and my first instinct was to kick him off and get him banned from every BBS in the area. Yeah, I know, nerds. Instead I decided to not be angry and asked him how he did it. This led to me learning about phone phreaking, running what ended up being one of the larger hacking phreaking BBSs in the early to mid 90s, meeting people in that scene who got me a job in college, which got me a job building huge phone networks many states away when I graduated. All because I decided to ask some other kid how he hacked my computer 20 years ago. Teach your kids that story. 'Tis awesome. During my last 2 years of school I had to pick the subjects I wanted to complete. I'd managed to pick all but one, and I was stuck between chemistry and graphic design. I ended up picking chemistry, so I met new people, of which one girl I ended up dating, and with that one girl, we had a daughter. The choice between chemistry and graphic design really came down to may as well learn chemistry. Makes me sound impressive. TL. Doctor. Through chemistry, I created life. I heard people talking about this website called Reddit, so I went there one day and checked it out. I never accomplished anything ever again. Oh god, I think I may have seen that movie. Was there a part where the girl comes home and tells her parents she had pizza with her friends, but actually didn't eat? I also developed bulimia, and that was the first time I'd heard of it. I hate that I saw it. Holy crap, it's like The Ring. You watch the movie, then for the next couple of years you suffer from bulimia. When I was a kid I caught an episode of Oprah where she cleaned up a kid's bedroom by creating zones: play, sleeping, studying zones. I immediately went back to my room and dumped all my crap on the floor and created zones. Ever since then, I've been incredibly obsessive compulsive. I was bothered by stuff before. I lined up all my stuff at school and had some strange tendencies. But that was when I started needing to clean for days at a time. I'd be cleaning, in tears, all day and night. My parents physically pulling me away to go to school. I became severely depressed, and eventually I saw a doctor. I used to fold and rip up paper into perfect little squares throughout every visit, and I was soon also diagnosed with OCD. It took tons of medication trials to find one that allowed me to use the years of therapy I was lucky enough to receive. I'm no longer depressed. I don't clean all day and night anymore. Okay, I cleaned all yesterday night. It's exams. Dang Oprah. That's one reason I have huge problem with documentaries about this kind of thing. I am a former self-injurer and I'm doing research on self-injury now. So many people get the idea from made-for-TV documentaries and its inclusion on TV shows. It's ridiculous. People should know about it, but most of those programs really glamorize it rather than making it seem like a bad idea. OP, I'm glad that you are better now. Going the other direction. I lined up for the last Star Wars movie. It's responsible for probably half the people I socialized with now. It led me to a job I've had for the last few years, and got me much better at socializing. I'd be in a very different spot if I'd not done that. Changed me and my life for the better. By being a loser you stopped being a loser. That's actually pretty impressive. When I was in 6th grade, I wanted our mutt, wolf-born puppy to spend his first night with me on the bed. He got up on the bed and late into the night, he whimpered at my door. I assumed he wanted water or something, so I opened it up and fell right back asleep. That night, he got out and was hit by a car, killing him. I blamed myself for years. Jesus, that escalated quickly. I thought that was gonna be a cute story. After graduating high school, I didn't have a whole lot of money and neither did my parents. I decided to go to community college at first to save cash, but I was super embarrassed about it. My embarrassment caused me to wait until the last minute to sign up for classes. This, in turn, forced me into the only college algebra class I could take, one that started around 7 PM. First day of class, in walks the most gorgeous dude I've ever seen. Nearly 4 years later, We're still dating. Never would have met him if it weren't for my ashamed procrastination. I've always found that the strongest and most long-lasting relationships are built on a solid foundation of shame. I got fired from a dead-end job and was stressed out about how to support myself. While I was searching through job listings in the newspaper, my then boyfriend insisted I should go back to college. I wanted to keep looking for work but eventually agreed and chose to study physics because I'd recently discovered a passion for astronomy. We broke up a couple years later, but a year after that I met a hot exchange student. 12 years, 4 countries, 3 continents and a couple kids later, I live thousands of miles from home and couldn't be happier. You should send him a thank you card or something. A misshelved library book messed me up for ages. Somebody accidentally put a book of popular urban legends in the children's section of my local library. At the time I was looking for something similar to Goosebumps as far as the level of horror goes. Unfortunately, this book featured a number of stories. I'm sure you're all familiar with the girl who bought a second-hand dress and died because it was sold by a mortician, beheading via a wire stretched across the road, being cooked alive and tanning beds, etc. Reading that book was not only one of the first times in my young life that I realized I could die, but also the fact that it could happen at any moment via a freak accident. It was a bit much for my 8-year-old brain to handle. I was terrified for weeks. I couldn't sleep, didn't want to leave the house, and could not forget the stories. Fortunately I eventually got over it after almost a year of living in sheer terror. But to whoever shelved Southern Fried Rat and other gruesome tales in the children's section of the Grand Island Public Library in the early 90s, frick you. I was out of college for a year, and still unemployed. I was living with my dad and slowly transforming into a fat alcoholic. Then I took an opportunity to move to an area with better prospects. Yet, I'm working a dead-end job, but at least now I feel like I'm going somewhere. I also started working out, and I've lost 35 pounds. Good for you. Keep it up. Life is only as good as you make it. When I watched Tuesdays with Maury, my grandfather had just died and it really struck a chord in me because I regretted not spending more time with him. I remember breaking down in the middle of school because of that movie. My junior year religion teacher showed us that film. She died a little over a year later from the same disease. She didn't know she had it at the time. Ever since the first Final Destination movie I keep imagining the worst outcomes in daily situations such as driving the car or just simply going into the bathroom. I think it kind of triggered a mild form of anxiety in me. Saw a scary movie when I was little where a boy opened a shower curtain and there was a dead scary old lady sitting in bath water smiling at the boy. I've been afraid of what's behind a shower curtain ever since. I saw, when I was 7 or 6, a Mexican movie of a boy riding a horse and he fell and died. It made me cry so much. I was afraid of horses and still am. I'm scared of what they can do. So a movie brought me a big fear of horses. I joined a debate team to be around a boy that I liked. This took me from wanting to be a writer to diving headfirst into politics and justice. I joined Amnesty International, took political classes like We the People and International Issues. I went to college for International Political Economy and Economics and then mastering in Public Administration. My life completely changed because I had a crush. I thought characters in movies that stammer were adorable and funny, so I started pretending to stammer. It took me about 10 years to get off it and even now, I do it every once in a while. When I was 11 or so I saw an infomercial for a wrinkle cream. They were talking about laugh lines and how smiling too much or frowning too much would give you horrible wrinkles and make you miserable, etc. I remember thinking, holy frick, I smile a lot. I'm going to have lots of wrinkles. I spent the next few weeks actively watching myself for smiling so I wouldn't get wrinkles. I don't worry about the smiling crap anymore, but I'm still terrified as frick about wrinkles. I'm not even 30 yet, but I'm already eyeing the wrinkle cream aisle. Does anyone happen to know if I use this stuff before I get wrinkles, will it keep them from happening? Because if it does, I'm going out and buying that crap tomorrow. TLDR. Commercial for wrinkles made me stop smiling. I don't ever want to grow old, damn it. My dermatologist told me the best thing to prevent wrinkles is SPF 30 every single day. I was on track to be an English major but found out that I had to take a foreign language as part of it. I chose Latin out of spite. Make me take a foreign language. I'll choose the only dead language taught on campus, grumble grumble. Ended up switching majors to classical studies and met my girlfriend of almost 3 years in the process. You really picked a pretty good language to complement English major. I was on Yahoo Messenger one day and a girl messaged me because she was bored and I was listed as being online and local. We've been together 8 years and married 5. I made a smart butt comment in an RS credits a little over a year ago. Another redditor said something cheeky back, and we started PMing each other. He's super duper long distance, but we've been dating for a year now, and I think he's pretty great. D. I saw Trainspotting when I was 15. In March I will have 10 years clean. But that was a crazy 6 years. Parents, be careful of what you let your children watch. I watched The Snowman as a child. My parents rented the movie from the library. Back when renting media from the library was actually a thing. Thinking it would be a great Christmas movie. It's made me depressed since then. I would remember walking around the edges of the playground by myself while everyone played with each other on the seesaw, swings and sandbox. Still a solitary person to this day. I was picked on in grade school. Basically anytime I opened my mouth I would be cussed at. Eventually I decided not to say anything because it seemed like the only solution. My social skills definitely suffered because of this. I was extremely extroverted as a kid, but now I'm the opposite. I try hard to get involved with people, but now I hardly know what to say to get noticed. My mom is a penny. My aunt told me that. Before my mom died, my aunt asked her if there was any way she would be around watching over us and my mom said something about pennies. I don't remember my aunt's exact words, and now, my aunt tends to find pennies all over the place, whenever she is doing something of significance, even more when she is with my family. After pointing that out, I started noticing them all over the place too and make an effort to make sure they're right side up and place them back down in hopes that someone else will come along, find it, and, because of my mom, have a lucky day. Not only has it changed my actions, but it's also given me a little more faith in God when I was trying to sort that kind of stuff out. That's beautiful. I was really sick as a kid and I was frequently on steroids to help me breathe. Whenever I would get off of them, I would become really depressed for the next 4 or 5 days and the smallest thing would set me off. One of these times, my family was out of town staying in a hotel and, before we went to bed, we watched a documentary on this family on the Oregon Trail and how they eventually had to eat the dead members of their family for food. I cried the entire night because in my state I couldn't comprehend the sheer pain and torment that they must have gone through in cannibalizing their family. I still have nightmares from time to time about that and it's been probably 10 years. Similarly, I saw Girl, Interrupted about a week before I was hospitalized for suicidal ideation. Glad you're doing alright now, OP. When I was 6 years old my dad had some friends over and he placed a few beers in the fridge. I grabbed one thinking it was Coke. Can was red. Took a sip and absolutely hated it. Didn't drink at all until second semester of college. I flipped open the college catalog and noticed there was an Aikido class. I ended up meeting my wife there. I got a good job through it and lots of really close friends. I am now a black belt and have been teaching for years. The kids movie my teacher ate my homework gave me an irrational anxiety about dolls until I was about 18 years old. Looked it up on IMDb and it was a horror comedy. Womp. I lived under the impression Chucky was a true horror movie and was terrified of actually watching it. I was very annoyed when I watched it a year ago and realized how stupid it was. Oh crap, was it the one where she kept all her puke in jars and her mom found all the jars? And she'd eat a ton of Oreos and whipped cream and stuff at night? I remember that movie, yet I always thought those movies were kind of fricked up because a lot of times I didn't even know some of things were an option before seeing some movie or saw that was supposed to be helpful and informative. About a year and a half ago, I used to play Pokemon a lot. I was also really unhappy with my life at the time. In an attempt to improve enough to enter competitions, I talked to people on Cerebi. I started talking to one person on a regular basis over Skype, which indirectly led to me finding a purpose in my life and going back to school. I thought you were going to say that BBC doco about what would happen if a nuclear bomb detonated over your city. No idea what it was called, but some bright spark let me watch the whole thing when I was about 8 years old. That haunted me for years. The movie The Right Stuff inspired me to join the Air Force at age 25. To my surprise, my first duty assignment was at Edwards AFB in California, which is what 50% of where the movie was filmed, and ended up being assigned to personal security for General Chuck Yeager, who called me Hertz, and became my nickname amongst my peers. The movie was also about Chuck Yeager being the first man to break the sound barrier. I also was assigned to the Space Shuttle close-in security team, and was involved in over 17 shuttle landings. Got to meet President George H.W. Bush and his wife Barbara while working with the Secret Service when the Space Shuttle Discovery returned to space after the Challenger accident and landed at Edwards AFB. I don't think I would have ended up there without the inspiration of that movie. I look back now and feel I was destined to be there at that place and time. My whole life turned around from that one movie. I still get goosebumps when I hear the theme music to The Right Stuff. Hey, as a guy who's had a problem with bulimia, I can relate. If it wasn't for health class, I wouldn't have even considered that an option. When I was a teenager, maybe 13 or 14, my mom encouraged me to pick up fencing as a fun sport to engage in that I could still do despite my disability. This led to me going to a fencing camp when I was 15 or so. This fencing camp took place on the University of Pennsylvania campus. I thought, seems nice here. Maybe this is where I'll apply to college. Being book smart but an idiot in the ways of the world, I had no idea UPenn was an Ivy League institution, and thus was not intimidated into not applying. Long story short, I applied ED and got in. It was only after I got in, by the by, that I found out how prestigious it was. Tried to be a nurse, failed out of chemistry, went into communications instead. Now I live in LA doing PR. I wonder how different my life would have been if I hadn't said why not to learning how to fence. I posted about this on Memento Mori 4's comment too. I started to cut myself shortly after reading Our Bodies Ourselves. It's a book for preteens that explains puberty, mental illness, sexual orientation, relationships, and other stuff about growing up. It's pretty popular, and I think it has a good reputation for being scientific and preteen friendly. In the mental illness parts they had stories from former self-harmers. I'm pretty sure I was depressed or had some other kind of mental disorder for most of my childhood. I read that book when I was 11. Since preschool I was afraid of other children, loud noises, getting in trouble, and getting stuff wrong at school. I would have random crying fits for no reason and they were completely beyond my control. Somehow I got the idea to hurt myself from that book, but I didn't realize I was bisexual until high school. I'm pretty sure the book did exactly the opposite of what it was meant to in that regard. I don't know if cutting would have occurred to me out of the blue. I probably would have found out about it from other girls at school since a lot of girls started to hurt themselves and get eating disorders that year. Though I was the first one I knew about and that a lot of my friends knew about. Sometimes I wonder if I gave them the idea. Cutting would have never occurred to me if I hadn't read over and over that it was a way of dealing with sadness. I was depressed as a child and sometimes thought about suicide, but I never thought about recreational cutting until I read about it. When I was a kid I slept over at my cousin's house. Everyone was asleep but me, and a movie about Jim Jones, the Johnstown Massacre guy, came on. I was horrified as I watched parents force their children to drink poisoned Kool-Aid. I was probably 10 or 11. For some reason, that really opened my eyes to the fact that the world is not a safe place. Then when I was like 18 I saw the movie Kids. That really messed with me. I come from a very small town in Texas and I just was completely devastated to realize that things like what went on in that movie actually happen. People live like that. They do terrible things and kids lose their innocence way too soon. It kinda broke my heart. When I was in 5th grade it was the first year we had different teachers for different subjects, so it was the first time we had a real science class. My biology teacher was named Mrs. Bloom and she had a class pet rat named Aristotle. She was rad. Every day at the start of class she'd write a question about the previous day's lesson on the board for us to answer and turn in. One day she said she was going to ask us something we hadn't been taught before and to just do our best to answer it. She wrote something like, "What does bias mean?" I thought about it for a minute and then wrote, "Life." She collected everyone's answers and then she asked me to step out into the hall. Now, being called out into the hall to be spoken to was a huge deal and usually meant you were in trouble. I was a really good kid and I knew I hadn't done anything, so I was just confused. Once we were out in the hall, Mrs. Bloom said, "I just wanted to tell you that you were the only one to get the answer right, and that the world is your apple." My education has been a long and winding road since then, but I am now a neuroscience and philosophy major. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.